Picture this. You're a 12-year-old girl living in a small Georgian village in 1650, helping your mother tend to the family's modest vegetable garden. The morning sun filters through the grapevines that shade your home, and you can hear your younger brothers laughing as they chase chickens in the courtyard. Your father is a blacksmith, not wealthy but respected in your community. You have dreams of marrying the baker's son when you come of age, maybe having children of your own someday, living a simple but meaningful life in the only place you've ever known. Then you hear the sound that makes every parent in your village freeze with terror, the thundering of hooves accompanied by the distinctive jingle of Ottoman military equipment. Your mother's face goes ashen as she drops the herbs she's been gathering. Your father emerges from his workshop, his hands still black with soot, and you see something in his eyes you've never seen before: complete and utter helplessness. The Ottoman officials, who dismount their horses, are impeccably dressed, their silk robes pristine despite the long journey from Constantinople. They carry scrolls bearing the Sultan's seal, and their eyes sweep across the gathered villagers with the calculating precision of merchants evaluating livestock. When one of them points directly at you, your world begins to collapse. Your mother falls to her knees, pleading in a language these men understand but choose to ignore. Your father stands frozen, knowing that resistance means death for your entire family. You are about to become property of the Ottoman Sultan, destined for his harem, one of hundreds of women who will disappear behind the walls of Topkapi Palace, never to be seen by their families again. What awaits you in that marble prison will make you long for these simple days in your mountain village, where the greatest worry was whether the harvest would be sufficient to last through winter. Before diving into these forgotten stories of systematic abuse disguised as luxury, if you enjoy learning about the hidden truths of history, consider hitting that like button and subscribing for more content like this. Please comment below to let me know where you're listening from. I find it incredible that we're exploring these dark chapters of history together from different parts of the world, connected across time and space by our shared commitment to remembering those whose voices were silenced. What you're about to hear isn't just another tale of historical excess. It's the story of how an entire empire built its power on the systematic enslavement and abuse of women and children. How beauty became a curse that condemned thousands to lives of unimaginable suffering. And how some of history's most celebrated rulers were actually monsters who treated human beings like disposable objects for their entertainment. The Ottoman harem system represents one of history's most sophisticated and brutal examples of institutionalized sexual slavery, yet it's often romanticized in popular culture as some kind of exotic paradise where beautiful women lived lives of leisure and luxury. The reality was far more sinister, a carefully constructed machine designed to break spirits, destroy identities, and transform human beings into living dolls that existed solely for the pleasure of men who viewed them as less than animals. Your journey to Constantinople begins with a forced march that will take weeks, chained alongside dozens of other girls and young women who share your fate. The slave caravan moves like a serpent across the landscape, leaving behind a trail of tears and broken families. You quickly learn the first rule of survival: weakness equals death. Girls who can't keep up, who fall ill, or who simply lose the will to continue, are left behind to die. Their empty spaces in the line serve as constant reminders of what happens to those who surrender to despair. The older women in the caravan, those who've survived previous selections and are being transferred between households, whisper warnings that chill your blood. They speak of the palace in hushed tones, describing a world where women vanish without trace, where the Sultan's whims determine life and death, where beauty is both blessing and curse. They tell stories of mass executions, of women sewn into sacks and thrown into the Bosphorus, of tortures that defy imagination, all carried out within marble halls decorated with the most exquisite art in the known world. As you approach the capital, the magnitude of what you're entering becomes clear. Constantinople stretches before you like something from a fever dream. Minarets piercing the sky, the massive dome of Hagia Sophia dominating the horizon, and rising above it all, the sprawling complex of Topkapi Palace, where your new life of captivity will begin. The city that represents the height of civilization and cultural achievement will become your prison, its beauty a mockery of the horrors that await within. The slave market assaults every sense with overwhelming intensity, hundreds of voices haggling over human flesh, the stench of unwashed bodies and fear-soaked clothing, the sight of children barely old enough to walk standing naked on auction blocks, while potential buyers examine them like horses at a fair. You're cleaned and oiled before your sale, not out of kindness but because clean merchandise fetches higher prices. The oil makes your skin gleam in the harsh sunlight, highlighting features that will determine your fate. Your purchaser is an agent of the imperial harem, a eunuch whose own mutilation as a child has made him simultaneously victim and enforcer of this system. His eyes hold no compassion as he evaluates your potential, calculating how much training you'll require to become suitable for presentation to the Sultan. You're loaded onto a cart with other selected girls, all of you now officially property of the most powerful man on earth. The entrance to Topkapi Palace should be magnificent, and it is, in a way that makes your stomach turn. The marble corridors gleam like mirrors. The walls are decorated with intricate tile work that took master craftsmen years to complete. And everywhere you look, beauty and horror coexist in ways that will haunt your nightmares for years to come. This is where art and suffering intertwine, where the pinnacle of human creativity provides the setting for the depths of human cruelty. Your first glimpse of the harem reveals a world operating according to rules that seem designed by madmen. Hundreds of women move through the corridors like ghosts, their eyes downcast, their movements careful and measured. They wear silk and jewels. Their quarters are luxurious beyond anything you've ever imagined. Yet something in their faces tells you that all this beauty is just window dressing on a tomb. These women are the walking dead, alive in body but systematically murdered in spirit. The hierarchy within the harem is as rigid as it is brutal. At the bottom are the odalisques, general servants who will likely never see the Sultan, but spend their lives serving those who might. Above them are the concubines, women beautiful enough to be presented to the Sultan for a single night of use before being discarded back into the general population. Higher still are the iqbals, favourites who have managed to capture the Sultan's attention for longer periods, though their elevated status makes them targets for the jealousy and plotting of other women. At the apex of this pyramid sits the Valid Sultan, the Sultan's mother, whose power over the harem is absolute and whose cruelty often exceeds that of her son. She rules through a combination of psychological manipulation and physical violence that would make professional torturers envious. Her word can elevate a woman to luxury or condemn her to death, and she wields this power with the arbitrary cruelty of someone who has forgotten what it means to be human. The training process begins immediately upon your arrival and is designed to systematically strip away everything that made you who you were. Your name is taken and replaced with something more pleasing to Ottoman ears, usually something that references your physical attributes or supposed virtues. Your native language is forbidden. Speaking Georgian or any other regional tongue results in severe punishment. Your memories of home, family, and former identity are treated as diseases to be cured through a combination of indoctrination and abuse. You're assigned to a dormitory with dozens of other girls, sleeping on silk cushions that feel like chains against your skin. The rooms are beautiful, decorated with precious carpets, illuminated by crystal lamps, perfumed with exotic incenses. But they're also prisons where every moment is monitored and controlled. Privacy doesn't exist. Even your most intimate bodily functions are subject to observation and regulation. The educational curriculum is unlike anything you could have imagined in your village home. You learn to read and write in Ottoman Turkish, study poetry and literature, receive instruction in music and dance, and master the complex etiquette required for interaction with imperial officials. But woven throughout this seemingly sophisticated education are lessons of a different kind. Training designed to make you a perfect instrument of sexual pleasure for men who will never see you as fully human. The physical transformation they impose on your body is as systematic as it is degrading. Your diet is carefully controlled to maintain the soft curves that Ottoman men find appealing, while keeping you weak enough that resistance becomes physically impossible. Your skin is treated with oils and perfumes that make you smell like the exotic flowers in the palace gardens. But these same treatments contain substances that gradually alter your body's natural functions. Your hair is styled in elaborate arrangements that take hours to complete and require the constant attention of servants, creating another layer of dependency that makes independent action nearly impossible. But the psychological conditioning proves far more devastating than any physical modification. You're taught to compete with the other women for scraps of attention and favor, turning potential allies into enemies through a system of manufactured scarcity. When one girl receives a small privilege, an extra portion of food, a slightly more comfortable sleeping arrangement, a piece of jewelry, the others are encouraged to view her success as their failure. This creates an environment where solidarity becomes impossible, and every relationship is poisoned by suspicion and jealousy. The eunuchs who supervise your training are themselves victims of this system, men who were castrated as children and molded into perfect instruments of control. Some retain fragments of compassion and try to protect the women under their care when possible. Others have become monsters, channeling their own pain and humiliation into cruelty toward those even more powerless than themselves. The chief black eunuch, known as the Kislar Agassi, wields authority that extends far beyond the harem walls, making decisions that affect the entire empire while remaining forever trapped within the same system that created him. You learn to read the subtle signs that indicate which women are falling from favor and which are rising in the Sultan's estimation. Those who displease him don't simply disappear, their fates serve as object lessons for everyone else. You witness women being dragged from their chambers in the middle of the night, their screams echoing through marble corridors before being abruptly silenced. Sometimes their bodies are returned as warnings. Other times, they simply vanish, leaving only whispered rumors about what might have happened to them. The Sultan himself remains a distant figure for most of your first year in the palace. You catch glimpses of him during formal ceremonies, a man who appears almost godlike in his elaborate robes and jeweled turban, surrounded by officials who prostrate themselves in his presence. But the women who have actually encountered him privately tell different stories. They describe a man whose appetites have been warped by absolute power, who views human beings as objects to be used and discarded according to his momentary whims. Some sultans are worse than others, and you've arrived during the reign of Ibrahim, known to history as Ibrahim the Mad. His predecessor was cruel enough, but Ibrahim's mental instability has transformed the already horrific conditions within the harem into something approaching hell on earth. He delights in psychological games that pit women against each other in increasingly degrading competitions. He orders elaborate punishments for the smallest infractions, often involving public humiliation that breaks women's spirits more effectively than any physical torture. Ibrahim's obsession with novelty means that even those women who manage to please him temporarily live in constant fear of being replaced. He regularly orders mass executions to clear space for new acquisitions, treating human lives like seasonal decorations to be discarded when they no longer amuse him. The stories that filter down through the palace hierarchy describe orgies of violence that seem more like fever dreams than historical reality. Yet you've seen enough to know that even the most extreme rumors probably understate the truth. The most terrifying aspect of life in Ibrahim's harem is the complete unpredictability of his moods. Women who were favored one day might find themselves condemned to death the next, not for any action they've taken, but simply because the Sultan has grown bored or suspicious. He sometimes orders the execution of women he's never even met, selecting victims based on reports from eunuchs or the whims of other concubines seeking to eliminate competition. You witness the preparation for one of these mass executions during your second year in the palace. The condemned women are gathered in a courtyard normally used for musical performances, their silk gowns creating a grotesque parody of a festive gathering. Palace servants bring out leather sacks and coils of rope with the same casual efficiency they might display when preparing for a banquet. The women understand what's happening. Some weep silently, others pray in languages you don't recognize. A few maintain a dignity that seems almost supernatural under the circumstances. The drowning process itself is designed to maximize psychological terror for both victims and witnesses. The women are sewn into weighted sacks while still conscious, ensuring they have time to contemplate their fate before being loaded onto boats for the short journey to the deep waters of the Bosphorus. The executioners work with practiced efficiency, treating this mass murder as routine administrative business. Some of the condemned women call out names: mothers, fathers, siblings they'll never see again, their voices growing fainter as the sacks are sealed. But perhaps most disturbing is how quickly life in the harem returns to normal after these atrocities. New women arrive to replace the executed ones within days, and the survivors are expected to continue their routines as if nothing has happened. Speaking about the dead is forbidden. Their names are erased from records, and their possessions redistributed among the living. It's as if they never existed at all, which serves as perhaps the most effective deterrent of all. The knowledge that your entire existence can be eliminated without leaving even the slightest trace. The psychological impact of witnessing such systematic dehumanization while being unable to prevent it creates wounds that never heal. You develop the 1,000-yard stare of someone who has seen too much, the careful movements of someone who knows that any action might be their last, the hollow smile of someone whose spirit has been systematically crushed, but whose body must continue performing the role of a living person. Some women adapt by becoming predators themselves, earning favor through betraying others or volunteering to carry out punishments against their former friends. Others retreat so completely into themselves that they become like walking corpses, present in body but absent in every way that matters. A few maintain their humanity through acts of secret kindness, sharing food with the weak, comforting the terrified, preserving memories of the dead. But even these small acts of resistance carry enormous risks. The most successful women in this environment are those who master the art of psychological invisibility, making themselves useful enough to avoid punishment while remaining unremarkable enough to avoid attention. They develop an almost supernatural ability to anticipate the moods of their captors and adjust their behavior accordingly. But this survival strategy comes at the cost of their essential selves. They become perfect slaves at the expense of everything that once made them human. The years blur together in this marble hell, where time is measured not in seasons, but in survival. You've learned to move through the corridors like smoke, to speak in whispers that carry no opinion, to smile with eyes that reveal nothing. Your reflection in the polished surfaces shows a young woman draped in silk and adorned with jewels, but you know you're looking at a ghost wearing your face. By your third year, you've witnessed horrors that would have driven your younger self to madness. You've watched women disappear into Ibrahim's private chambers and emerge days later as hollow shells who flinch at sudden movements and speak in voices barely above a whisper. You've seen the palace gardeners drag screaming figures through the corridors at night, their destination always the same: the boats waiting at the water's edge, where weighted sacks transform living people into anonymous corpses. The hierarchy you once struggled to understand now governs every breath you take. You've clawed your way up from the lowest rank of odalisque through a combination of intelligence, careful observation, and strategic betrayals that still haunt your dreams. Each promotion required sacrificing another piece of your humanity, until you sometimes wonder if anything of your original self remains beneath the layers of silk and survival strategies. The woman who shares your sleeping chamber is named Layla. though she whispers that her real name was something else in a language she's forbidden to speak. She arrived 2 years after you, already broken by whatever happened during her journey to Constantinople. Her eyes hold the particular emptiness of someone who has learned that hope is just another word for prolonged suffering. At night, when the palace settles into its deceptive quiet, she sometimes makes sounds that aren't quite crying, more like the whimpers of an animal that has forgotten how to express pain in human terms. The marble halls that once echoed with your childhood dreams of simple happiness now hold only the whispers of women who learned too late that beauty can be the cruelest curse of all. Behind those gleaming walls, decorated with the finest art that human hands could create, thousands of girls just like you vanished into a system designed to consume their humanity while preserving their physical forms for the pleasure of men who saw them as nothing more than exotic objects to be collected and discarded. What makes this story so haunting isn't just the individual suffering, though that was beyond measure, but how an entire civilization celebrated these horrors as symbols of sophistication and power. The same empire that produced magnificent architecture, groundbreaking literature, and complex legal systems also normalized the complete destruction of human beings on an industrial scale. The contradiction wasn't accidental, it was foundational. The leisure and luxury that allowed Ottoman elites to pursue intellectual and artistic achievements was built on the backs of enslaved women and children whose screams were muffled by silk tapestries and marble walls. Your story, multiplied by thousands, represents one of history's most systematic examples of institutionalized cruelty disguised as civilization. The girl who once chased chickens in a Georgian village became a ghost haunting palace corridors, and her fate reminds us that behind every empire's golden age lie foundations built from human suffering that we're still too uncomfortable to fully acknowledge. Those marble halls still stand today, transformed into museums where tourists admire the beauty while remaining blissfully ignorant of the price that beauty demanded from those who had no choice but to pay it.